Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Matt Zakreski coming to you from Pennsylvania. I wish I could be with you in Maryland right now, but I'm going to give you my distance presentation of riding out the storm or managing emotional intensity in gifted children. So let's dive in. So today we're going to learn how to better manage emotional outbursts. We're going to increase understanding of where big feelings come from and develop the language to communicate about emotional intelligence. We're not going to teach our kids not to have feelings, and we're not going to give up on our ability to help kids. Gifted kids have a different brain. This is something that neuroscience backs up fully, and it's key to understanding this population to move forward in a positive way. Gifted kids are so emotional because their brains are wired to be more emotional. The limbic system in gifted brains is actually more integrated and larger than it is in a neurotypical brain. That means that if you're trying to think of what's the capital of Maryland again, you're like, I think it's Baltimore. No, it's Annapolis. It's Annapolis. And for most of us, that's a simple process. But for a gifted kid, that information retrieval is going to pass through an emotional circuitry, which means they're more likely to feel emotional from it. Um, Also, we need to recognize the fact that for gifted kids, the prefrontal cortex, which is right here between your eyes, is the part of our brain that's our brake. It's our inhibition system that tells us to stop before we do something. For gifted kids, that comes online much later in life. The prefrontal cortex doesn't develop until fully develop until late 20s, which means you have a kid that has a more emotional brain with bigger responses more often, and the system that's meant to be the brakes to that engine doesn't work as well. So it's sort of neurologically speaking, it's a perfect storm for big feelings and thus big behaviors. The thing I wanted to focus on, right, is if you're sitting there watching this on your computer, give yourself a thumbs up and look at your thumbnail, like we have here in this picture. What that is that's about the size of your amygdala. And the amygdala is the source of your fight or flight emotions in your brain. Now give yourself a second thumbs up. For gifted kids, your amygdala can actually be up to twice as big as a neurotypical amygdala. So even something small, if you double it, means that it's that much more impact. So gifted kids just have a larger reservoir of emotional content and emotional output. We need to understand that and recognize it as we move forward in working with this population. So we're going to focus our work today a lot on sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight nervous system. That is, something scary happens, your body responds because it feels like it's in danger. Now, this system was great when we were cave people and there were saber-toothed tigers running about. Now, in 2020, where the threats are not the same, our body doesn't know the difference. So failing a math test feels like there's a bear outside the door. And that feeling can't be wrong, but the trigger, the emotional response it triggers, is out of sync with what's happening. So what we need to do is activate our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest system, to bring us back to baseline. The more we can do that, the better we feel. So ultimately, the more activated our bodies are, the more our sympathetic nervous system is firing, it means that our good thinking brain, the top part of our head, is going offline because we don't need to be thinking complex thoughts when we're running for our lives from a saber-toothed tiger. The energy of our body needs to be focused on running away. So what this means is that when our kids are upset, our go-to move for many educators is to be like, hey, calm down, or hey, use your words. Tell me what happened. Our kids may not be able to do that because if the good thing part of your brain is here and this is your emotional response part, it sits on top of it. When you're upset, the good thinking part goes ping, pops off. So we need to help them put that cap back on so they come back and they ground themselves and are able to use those words and use abstract thought and come back to us. And before I tell you the key to do that, I want to acknowledge that this is really, really hard. This is super frustrating. So you're going to feel overwhelmed by this. You're going to have rough days. It doesn't make you a bad parent or educator or mental health professional or whatever your job might be. When people get upset, it makes us upset because we're social creatures. The thing we need to do is think about first what's happening, right? What needs is this violating? Is it our needs? Like, I really need to get to the grocery store right now. Well, do you? Do you need to go to the grocery store right now? Or this kid needs to stop being bullied. Well, that's a serious problem, right? Can we stop it right this minute? Probably not. It's going to take time. So let's take time and get more information. It's really helpful to us to separate content versus process. Now, if you work with gifted kids or you have a gifted kid, you know that many gifted kids are hyperverbal. They have the ability to provide just incredible amounts of verbal content. The story I often tell is, I was once working with an 8-year-old who was very upset, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Dr. Matt, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to murder you. I'm going to chop you up with an axe and leave your body in a creek so it'll get eaten by raccoons." That's a direct quote. It's the kind of thing you remember. And the thing is, if I responded to the content of what he said, right, the actual words, I would call the police. I would call 911 because he's threatening to murder me. But he's 8 and I'm at the time 34 and I'm 6 foot and 200 pounds. Like, I think I'm going to win that fight. But I also know that that's not actually what he wants to do. What I need to attend is the process. How his words make me feel. His words make me feel angry and scared and hurt, which means he's feeling angry, scared, and hurt. So I was able to say to him, like, "Hey, buddy, it sounds like you're really pissed off." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm really pissed off." And I'm like, "Okay, what's making you mad?" He goes, he gives me this list of things. I'm like, "Wow, sounds like you're having a really tough day." And then you just watch his body deflate. And it was, "Oh, yeah, it's been really hard. Let's talk about it." And then we went back into my office and we had a great session. And then he just, and then the day ended, right? So our kids are going to try and suck us into content, debating the legality or the ethics or the structure of what we're doing. Whereas in all honesty, we serve ourselves best by attending to the process, attending to how these things make us feel. The secret to doing that is that our brains and bodies want to return to homeostasis. They want to go back to neutral because being stressed out is stressful to our bodies. So the brain needs to have a request to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest system. Something emotional triggers the sympathetic nervous system. So fight or flight, we're activated. We need to calm it back down. The way to do that is to say out loud what you're feeling. So if you're angry, say you're angry. If you're stressed, say you're stressed. If you're sad, say you're sad, right? I think like probably like a lot of people, I don't love sitting in traffic. And what I found is that I'm sitting in traffic, I'd be gripping the steering wheel, right, like this, and I'd be tense in my body. After a while, I realized, like, I don't want to feel this way. So it's like, like alone in my car, right? I don't like feeling this way. This really pisses me off. And then my body would start to relax. It's not like flipping a light switch, right? It doesn't happen immediately, but as soon as you say it, your parasympathetic nervous system goes, "Oh, that's what I'm feeling? Oh, I'm going to start doing these things that calm my body down." And once you give it that code, that command, you're moving forward. I posted this sign in my classroom when I worked in the school, and now in my therapy office. You're allowed to feel however you want about anything you want. That's your right. Emotions can't be wrong. And that's key, right? I often tell my kids, I'm scared of clowns. Clowns are terrifying to me. And you may feel, right, like, I don't know why a grown man would be scared of clowns. And trust me, I don't know either. But my fear is real. I can't be wrong in that fear. And if you're also afraid of clowns, you're out there going, he gets it. He totally understands, right? But here's the thing. It's what you do with those feelings that matter. So your kids are allowed to be upset or scared or angry or whatever, but you get to help them make better choices with those feelings. So as we walk through this, I'm going to introduce our co-pilot. There's Calvin. Now, I would certainly argue that Calvin is a gifted kid, certainly imaginational overexcitability. And yes, he doesn't get very good grades and he has difficult relations with his peers and his teachers, but that's many gifted kids, right? The idea of the gifted kid sits there with their hands folded, staring vertically ahead is antiquated. So let's focus on how Calvin can help us move through some emotional processing. I want to set some expectations for you. The first is we are never going to get disruptive feelings and emotions to zero. It's not going to happen because we can't control emotions. So the presence of a feeling or meltdown, it doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean your kid failed. It means that they're having a moment where they're overwhelmed. If you see it that way, you'll be able to be kinder to yourself and kinder to your kid. Progress in developing these skills is not linear, it's not consistent, and it doesn't last forever. It takes a lot of hard work. Set those expectations. The impact of environment is really real, so pay attention. Like, what are the times where things go well? What are the times where things are really hard? The more we know about it, the more data we have, we can make informed choices. We want to focus on concrete skills. Oftentimes what we end up telling kids, right, is calm down, take a break, use your words. These are abstract concepts. We need to make things very concrete for kids to say, I want you to help me name the feeling you have. What feeling are you having right now? That's concrete. It's a concrete task. I want you to go get a drink of water and take 4 deep breaths. That's concrete. The more concrete we are, the more they develop those skills, the more those skills generalize. As we try to shape behavior and work with our kids, praise and connection is way more powerful than punishment. It is so easy to get sucked into this mindset, right, of Sally's being bad, so I'm sending Sally to the principal's office. That'll show it. But Sally's really upset and being disruptive, and she has no control over that. So if we work with Sally and we give her praise and we try to keep her in the room, she's going to feel better and then do better, which means everybody else does better. It's just remember, this is really hard, and it's okay that it's really hard. Even though it's really hard, it's up to us as parents, teachers, mental health professionals, administrators to help our kids regulate their emotions. That's the key to this. Beneath every behavior is a feeling. Beneath every feeling is a need, which means that we want to focus on what our kids are telling us that they need. Not easy to do, right? But if we see it that way, we move to a much more empathetic place. We move to a place of problem solving, not punishment. So if your kid is acting up in class and they're being disruptive and they're saying this is stupid, they're definitely communicating a feeling with you. Remember, step out of content into process. How are your kids' actions making you feel? Angry, upset, scared? That's a good hint as to how your kid is feeling. So maybe you say to them, hey, you look like you're having a tough time. What's going on? And that might be the first time in that kid's life that an adult has taken the time to ask them, what's going on? Because this isn't how you normally act. And say, well, I'm feeling X, Y, Z. Oh, what's causing you to feel this way? These things happened. Once you know what happened, you're in a position to help solve the problem and move forward. The key, one of the foundational skills here is identifying feelings. So we want to become more aware of our feelings in our body. That's a great way to increase control over those feelings. Our feelings start in our brain, but they impact our entire body. So when our kids are feeling emotionally activated, and I do this whenever I work with gifted kids, I do a couple lessons on what do emotions look like. If I make this face and I'm angry, I'm communicating that with my eyebrows, my eyes, my forehead, my nose, my mouth, my fist, my shoulders, and my neck. That's a lot of things. So we let our kids say, when you see a feeling, what's communicating that to you? How can you tell? You may need to prime them early on. You may say, you look feeling X because of reasons ABC. But the more we say that overtly and when we say it concretely, our kids start to generalize those skills and internalize those skills. This is not language most people use. So when we use it, it's going to stick out in their brains because it's unique. And that's good because we want them to hear these things. Ultimately, just repeat. That's how kids are going to do better. Dealing with outbursts, which you certainly will when working with this population. The key here is to watch out for replacement language. Gifted kids, because they're so verbal, are good at using code words or phrases to replace their feelings. So instead of saying this is too hard for me, they'll say I'm bored. Instead of saying I'm angry, they say I'll kill you, right? Instead of all my friends hate me means I'm sad. Um, Once you understand that framework, it helps us move to a place of problem solving. So first thing we do is we validate the feelings. I'm sorry you think school is stupid. How can I help you be less stupid? You once again you help prompt that use of feelings terms. I feel blank. You look blank to me right now. I am blank right now. I think these things are happening. Okay, tell me more about that. Help me understand. Um, Once they're calm, once you've navigated the storm, then move into the problem solving. Right? What can we do? Let's collaborate. And just to remind you, right, feelings can't be wrong. So it's going to be easy to fall into this trap of, listen, I don't understand why this kid is flipping tables and screaming because they got a 97 on a spelling test. A 97 on a spelling test is very good. But for that kid, whatever that 97 represents is enough to have that emotional outburst. So don't try to get it, try to see it, right? We see it first, we accept it, and then we move forward. Verbal aggression, obviously a thing we see as well. This is a more high stakes thing of intervening. First thing we do is what's the context? What happened? Who knows what happened? What were the people involved? What are the relationships? What are the history? We need to get them away from the person if we can. Always have a safe person in mind. As gifted specialists, you may be that kid's safe person. That's part of the gig. Have a backup person if you can. And you may need to go for a walk. You may need to let them sit in silence. You may need to do some deep breathing or shoot a basketball in an empty gym or whatever that thing is. But if they're that activated, first thing we need to do is get them someplace safe. I also, especially, I tell my kids, never text or email angry, never social media post angry. If you're mad, the first thing I want you to do is take your phone and put it somewhere else. Put it in another room, hide it under your bed, lock it in your car, whatever you need to do. Because if you put on Instagram that everybody at your school is stupid and you hate them and they wish they were dead, well, then the local PD is going to be showing up at your house at some point, and we don't want that. Once it's out there forever. So let's find a different way to show those emotions. But it does come back to validation. If it gets that mad at you, say, yeah, you're allowed to feel that angry or scared or jealous or whatever that feeling is, right? If you really like somebody at school and you ask them out and they say no, you're allowed to be hurt by that. You're allowed to feel upset by that. But you aren't allowed to say threatening words or wait by their locker or blast them on social media. Those are things you can't do. I can help you find things you can do that will help you, but you can't do these things. In public, right? We take our kids out in the community. If we take them on a field trip, when you're in public, the stakes feel higher. So it really helps kids to regulate when we set expectations before we go. Where are we going? How long will we be there? What do I need from you when you're in this place, right? What do we have to help us be successful? Talk about who's going to be there, right? Is it the other kids from the gifted class? Are there strangers? We're meeting, your cousins and your aunt and uncle. Whatever those things are, the more expectations we set, the more our kids see things and they're not surprised and dysregulated by that. It's also really helpful to give your kids a code word. So if your kids come up to you and say banana, and that means they're starting to melt down, then they're empowered to see that and sense that and tell you that. And you're empowered to get out in front of the meltdown. So, I always say give the 5-minute car ride powwow, right? Before you get in, it's like, hey, we're going to the ice skating rink. I know that sometimes you have a tough time at skating practice. So we need to be here for 45 minutes. These are the things I need you to do. And if you start to get overwhelmed, stick your stick straight up in the air and I'll tell coach that means you need a break. Whatever, it empowers your kids to get out in front of their emotions and not have emotions be something that happens to them. Check in often. Think about their triggers and what you can do to avoid or minimize them. Think about what you need versus what your kid needs. Like you might think, well, we paid for this hockey lesson. The kid needs to finish the hockey lesson. If they're that melted down, no, they don't. The kid needs to be safe and calm first. I would say if you haven't carried your kid out of target like a football running back, are you even a parent? I mean, listen, it's going to happen to you whether you're a teacher or a mental health professional or a parent or an administrator or a grandparent or whatever. And that doesn't make it okay, but it normalizes it. If we were meeting in person, right, I would ask you all to raise your hands if this has happened to you. And I bet dollars to donuts that 2/3 of you would. I know I would. So take a breath and know that you're not the first person this has happened to, and you're going to be okay. Disappointment, very common with gifted kids. We tend to rush to fix the problems, but what that does is it can minimize our kids' pain. You're really upset that you got a 97 on a spelling test. That's an awesome thing. Maybe next time you can study a little harder. Whereas, though objectively speaking, those are true things, but it doesn't help our kids. We may not even really understand the problem. We always want to ask more questions and learn more about it, right? Say your kid comes up to you and says that they got unfollowed on TikTok by somebody. Do you have any idea what that means? I don't. So empower your kid, put them in the driver's seat. It's like, listen, I want to help, but I don't actually understand what TikTok is. Can you break that down for me? All of a sudden, your kid goes from feeling out of control and upset to, oh, this is a thing I know more about than this adult right here. Well, that's kind of cool. Oh, here's words about TikTok. And then once you've heard that, ask if you can share a similar anecdote. If you have something that loads in, your kid may benefit from that, but ask permission. It'll be help. Also, I see this all the time, and I share this with you as both a parent and a mental health professional. If your kid's upset, that's not a time for a capital L life lesson. You're fighting with this other kid. Well, you'd have more friends if you XYZ. Maybe that's a true sense, but oh my gosh, is that the time to say it? I don't think so. Wait till later. Um, you know, Store it. And then once we're calm and we're debriefing, say, hey, one of the things I think is happening is ... Another thing to focus on is empathizing first. You seem really upset. I'm sorry that happened. I would say the two most powerful words in the English language are "that sucks." Kids get that. Talk about what's making them upset. The more information you have, the more you can help. And I always tell my kids in disappointment, fail means frequent attempts at learning. To learn something, to gain a new skill, to level up, requires effort, requires failing, requires trying and falling short. That's 100% okay. Let that go. Task completion, another thing we're going to run into with gifted kids. Using rubrics is key. Let that support you. Wanting to do well is great. I support that in my kids. Wanting to be perfect is problematic because it's not possible. If you come to one of my other talks, you will learn more about perfectionism, but broadly speaking, it's a type of anxiety. Kids say, I can't start because my idea is not perfect. I want to keep working because it's still not right. I won't turn it in because it won't be perfect anymore. And those feelings are valid. What we need to do is support having them move through that, right? Understanding expectations, communicating them clearly is going to help with that. And you can say, I can't turn it, it's not perfect. And they say, cool. Then I won't give you a final grade, but show me what you've got so I can check off that it's done. And then once you're finished, then I'll grade it. That's totally fine, right? That's a clear expectation. Often when your kids want to spiral and they want to do their deep dives, I would say clear the hurdle, then climb the mountain. If you need 4 pages on Ben Franklin, give me 4 pages on Ben Franklin. Do that first. Then if you want to make a life-size Lego model of Ben Franklin, well, go with God, my child, right? To do the thing. But your kids are going to want to build the life-size model of Ben Franklin out of Legos first. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you can load in the lesson you want to do through that. But if they need to do the small thing first, set that expectation. I need you to clear this hurdle, then you can go. So let's use the rubric to walk through that, right? Because they're going to say, well, I know this is what I'm excited. This is what I really want to do. Awesome. I love that. I validate that. And also, I need you to do this other thing first because that's what I have to grade you on. So we use that to set expectations and build a context around this. Then we have panic, one of my personal favorites. We all have different trigger items and levels of response. Um, Building a relationship with your kid helps you know their specific concerns and fears. Using concrete language to make feelings more solid. How big is your feeling right now? What's its size, shape? If you touched it, what would it feel like? What color is it? Rate it from 1 to 10. Whatever you can do to take it from an abstract, out of control thing to something tangible is going to help your kid get in front of it. And I told my kids, listen, this thing is upsetting. I get that you're freaking out about it. And the longer you can stick with this, the more you've developed resiliency. But if you need to get out of here, then let's get out of here. My job is to keep you safe. So using language, making escape a choice rather than a thing you have to do, empowers them to move through it. Peer difficulties, probably enough said if you work with this population, but let's walk through it. Other people makes living very difficult because we can't control their reactions or behavior. One of the interesting things about these, doing as many talks as I do is that, I think I'm a pretty engaging speaker, and I don't know if this is a great example of that, and I'll be up there and I'll talk to a room, and then inevitably I look out into the audience and I see someone checking their phone or someone sort of staring off into the distance, and that used to make me really upset. But now I realize, you know what? I can't control your reactions or behavior because I don't know what you're going through. Maybe you got no sleep last night. Maybe you already know what I'm talking about. Maybe this is, you have some deep-seated hatred towards me. I hope not, but you know what? I don't know. And that's the thing. I don't get to control your actions or behavior. So all I can do is the best I can do. Other people are going to act in ways that are ridiculous. Yep. We accept it. We make it part of the story, and then we move on. There are always other explanations for people's behaviors. Your gifted kids will likely go to a negative place. Well, Johnny's acting this way because he hates me. That's possible. What's another explanation? What do you mean? Well, do you think Johnny had a bad day? I guess. You think Johnny didn't get a lot of sleep last night? I don't know. You think Johnny's bus ran late, so he had to get a car? We can always come up with silly or ridiculous explanations, right? We don't disagree. We don't get into arguments about it. We just prompt them to think about other things, because perspective taking is key. If you can have perspective taking, you can have empathy. If you can have empathy, it's harder to stay mad at somebody. We talk about what we know, and we talk about how we never know the whole story. Talk about positive exposure. Let's put kids in situations to succeed. I always use the language of intent versus impact with kids. So, let's say you and I are walking down a hallway together. I bump into you, you fall down, you break your leg. Now, clearly, I wasn't walking down the hallway to break your leg, but I bumped into you and you fell and your leg is broken. So my intention doesn't change what ends up happening. Your kids are going to be like, well, I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. I see that. However, it doesn't change the fact that this thing happened as a result of what you did. So we can separate intention from impact, right? You were trying to give somebody a compliment and it backfired and now their feelings are hurt, and you're sitting there going, but I didn't mean to, but I didn't mean to, but I didn't mean to. Sure, it doesn't change the fact that their feelings are hurt. Understanding intent versus impact is also fundamental to understanding empathy, because it's outside you. When I think about regulating emotions, when I think about doing this work, I often go to the thunderstorm metaphor. So when a gifted kid melts down, when they have big feelings, it can feel like a thunderstorm. Big, intense, loud, dark, scary. Oh my gosh, right? And it's going to mess with our plans. Say you want to go see an Orioles game, right? You're packing up the car, you look out and there's a thunderstorm, and you're probably pretty upset because you wanted to go see a baseball game and you can't. So we have in that moment two choices. We can go out into the storm anyway and put ourselves in danger, or we can say, you know what, this sucks, but I'm going to get someplace safe until the storm goes on. Then I'll make another choice. So getting mad at the thunderstorm doesn't help us. You're allowed to be disappointed or scared. But all storms pass eventually, and most are shorter than you think, especially if you choose to do something else so you're not pressed up against the window staring at the storm, because then you're just focused on it. So, wow, my kid is melting down right now. So I'm taking my expectation of getting to the grocery store by 4 o'clock and I'm just throwing it away because that's not possible right now in this moment. I wish it was, but it's not. So, okay, I'm going to get someplace safe. And when it's done, we clean up, we process, and we get back to what we're doing. When the storm is over, we process. We talk about what happened, what made us feel that way, and what do you think happened as a result? We always talk about what we can learn from something. I'm a big believer in the idea that you either win or you learn. That's it. And since thunderstorm meltdowns are often not a winning situation, well, what can we learn from this? Wow, it sounds like you're a little overtired. It sounds like, you tried really hard and you didn't get what you wanted. We learn something from this because then that helps our kids step out of a place of shame. I feel so embarrassed that I had a meltdown to, okay, this is an opportunity where I can learn something. And maybe they learned like, wow, I'm not ready to do this thing yet. That's okay because now we know that, right? Thunderstorms are going to happen again. They happen every year. The trick is to see it coming whenever possible and be proactive about it. Accepting the thunderstorm helps us get out of it faster. As parents, our skills are important to practice what we preach. We model emotional language and self-regulation as best we can. When we get upset, talk to our kids about it. It's like, wow, daddy had a rough day today and daddy used loud words. And daddy should know better, right? So daddy's going to do these things. We use meta communication. We talk about talking. I want to talk to you about your feelings right now. Are you okay with that? Asking permission is meta communication. That's key. Give your kids some power. Give them some agency. Remove your ego if you can. It's not about us. It's about our kids. Proactive work goes a long way. Set expectations. Check in. Emotions are normal. They're not good or bad. They're just comfortable or uncomfortable. They're a thing that happens to us. And then this is key. Avoid shoulds. You are likely going to have a moment as a parent or a professional where it's like, oh my gosh, you should be able to calm down. You should be able to make friends. You should be able to handle losing. And the kid knows that, right? But should really is shame plus could. So it's all the possibility of could plus shame. So you're blaming somebody or yourself for something that hasn't happened that you can't do. What's the point of that? It only hurts us. So instead of should, use could. You could handle losing better. What's getting in your way? What's making this hard? We want to be investigatory, not blaming. Why do we work so hard at this? That's ultimately like the point of this talk and the point of why we all signed up for this, right? And I love this comic from Calvin and Hobbes because, dad freaks out because the binoculars are broken and he has a right to be this angry. But you look at Calvin's face in the last panel, right? He feels terrible about it. I have never seen a kid who has had a meltdown, who was difficult with me and didn't feel bad afterwards because they don't want to feel that way. Who would? Who would choose to be that angry over having your lunchbox moved? Who would choose to be that upset over being kicked glass and kickball? Those feelings are uncomfortable. They're dysregulating to our bodies. So let's assume our kids don't want to feel the way they do. And that empowers us to help them get out of those feelings. I often tell this story. So I was working with a gifted school and we got to take them out. This was a high-level math class. And we were talking about physics. So we went and played mini golf because mini golf is a great way to practice physics, right? Angles and force and friction and all that fun stuff, right? And one of our kids, he missed a putt. And I'll never forget this. He took his putter and he flung it across the room. Then he ran across the course, jumped a fence, and started running down the highway. Now, of course, I ran after him, right? And I'm running down the highway, and I'm thinking, as I'm sprinting down the highway, thinking, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. I'm so mad. When I catch him, I'm going to kill him. And I finally caught him. When I got in front of him, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And he looked at me and he's like, and I'm like, dude, what happened? And he's like, I'm so sorry. And then he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he burst into tears. And in that moment, I moved from, this kid doesn't need me to be mad at him. This kid doesn't need me to kick him out of school. this kid needs a hug. This kid needs support. This kid needs empathy. So I was like, can I give you a hug? And I gave him a hug, right? And we're standing on the side of the highway and he's sobbing and I'm sobbing. And then we were able to talk it out. And I was able to say to him, like, what was that all about, man? That's scary to me. That was hard. And he was able to tell me his story about how his dad and his grandfather are really good golfers and they put all this pressure on him, and he was so sorry because of course he was. He didn't want to do that. He melted down. He lost control. When he realized I was coming at him from a place of empathy, he was able to talk to me calmly and support and with humility because he knew that wasn't what he was supposed to do. And I knew he knew that, right? That wasn't a lesson I needed to teach him. Well, we needed to figure out the need that was beneath the feeling that was beneath the behavior. We all know running away down the highway is a bad idea. We all know that he was angry and upset. What was the need? And he needed to know that failing was okay because he didn't think it was. That's why we work so hard at this. So I'm going to be sending out these slides. So here are lots of resources for you to educate yourself as professionals. Some great YouTubes on regulating feelings. And I accidentally clicked on one. That's fun. And if you have questions, please feel free to email me, drmattzakreski@gmail.com, or I'm also on Facebook at Dr. Matt Zakreski. I am here to be a resource for you. So if you have a difficult kid, if you have a family that needs help, please feel free to reach out to me. I am here to support this community, and I thank you for listening to this talk. I thank you for the work you do with these kids. Hopefully next year we will all be in person and we'll be able to trade some stories and have some laughs. But until then, keep yourselves safe. Thank you for the great work you do, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Thank you.